Welcome to the Sales versus Marketing podcast, where we sit down with sales, marketing, and business leaders. I'm your host, Scott, and today I am very excited to be sitting down with Guy Kawasaki. Now, if you've been living under a rock and don't know who Guy Kawasaki is, Guy is a renowned business leader, originally a member of Apple's Macintosh team in the 1980s. He is a Silicon Valley icon and a widely respected expert in entrepreneurship, venture capital, marketing, and business evangelism. Now, Guy is currently the chief evangelist of Canva. It's an online graphic design tool. He's a brand ambassador for Mercedes-Benz and an executive fellow of the Haas School of Business at UC Berkeley. He was a chief evangelist of Apple and a trustee of the Wikimedia Foundation. He has a BA from Stanford and an MBA from UCLA, and he has an honorary doctorate from Babson College. Now, Guy currently is working on his Remarkable People podcast. He engages he takes on over 50 different speaking engagements per year, as well as has authored over 15 books over the course of his career. So he's achieved quite a bit in terms of, like I mentioned, marketing, entrepreneurship, and just business in general. So I'm very excited to sit down with Guy and speak about what he's working on now, evangelism, and some career advice for people that are a little bit earlier on in their career. So without further ado, Guy Kawasaki. Let's speak about what you're doing with Canva in relation to evangelism.
Sure.
And why is evangelism important for companies in 2020?
I am the chief evangelist of Canva. And I have to explain what evangelism means. So evangelism comes from a Greek word meaning bring the good news. So I'm bringing the good news of Canva. And the good news of Canva is that Canva has democratized design so that anybody can create great design. You don't have to be a trained designer, and you also don't have to buy or rent expensive Adobe products. So think of Canva as Photoshop for the rest of us. So my job is to make sure that people are aware of the good news of Canva. And that's not unlike the first job in my career, the first tech job in my career, which was evangelizing Macintosh. So Macintosh's good news was it made people more creative and productive. And Canva's good news is that it is making everybody into a designer so that they can communicate more. And that's what I do.
And why is evangelism now a role when before it just seemed to be something that was a good practice, the best practice for companies? Now you sort of codified it into something that is an actual chief evangelist officer.
Yeah, I didn't intentionally codify it, but I think what happened is that people realized that simply advertising and promotion, which are forms of bludgeoning people into becoming your customer, is not as effective. It doesn't last as long. It's also more expensive. Whereas evangelism is selling your dream. It's getting people to believe in something as much as you do. So if I can get people to believe in Canva, and I think I did get people to believe as much in Macintosh as I did, they carry the battle forward for you. So with sales, the object is close the deal. With sales, the object is to get With sales, the object is to close the deal. With Canva and evangelism, the object is to get people to believe.
So, and by the way, the only thing I wanted to mention was we were just speaking about how long you want this to go, and you're like, I want to get surfing. The only reason why I usually run these for an hour is because I'm in Toronto, so I have no beach. I'm looking out. I have minus, 20 degree. Well, I'm Canadian, so minus 20 degrees Celsius. And it's just bleak and miserable.
So
I respect. Yeah, I got nothing else to do. We can talk all day, and it's going to be better than going outside and getting whipped in the face with wind.
Well, that's not my problem.
But no, 100%. So evangelism is something that obviously I think a lot of companies are doing now. The celebrity CEO, you see it a lot, and that's kind of what it's doing. It's removing. I don't want to put words in your mouth, so feel free to interject. But it's removing the brand from the company into an individual that's sort of being the champion. Can you explain? Go ahead.
Well,
go ahead.
I don't. theoretically and ideally, it's not that there's a single evangelist for the product or the company or the service. It's not even a separate department. Everybody in the company should be evangelistic about the product. So if you met the accounting person at Canva, you would see that he or she is evangelistic about Canva. There are people like me who have that in their job title, but everybody in your company, from the shipping clerk to the receptionist to the VP of HR, should be evangelistic about the product. And this is not to say that, the celebrity CEO is often an evangelist for the company, but not always. Many times the highly visible sort of CEO as brand, that's more about the person than about the evangelism. So I don't assume that every visible CEO is an evangelist. It would be a better assumption that every visible CEO is a jerk, and some of them are evangelists, not jerks.
I like that, and I think you're 100% on point. Now, I also like that you made a point of stating that everybody in the company in a marketing environment in 2020 should be an evangelist.
Yes,
but I if we look at companies, I don't think that's the case for most. In fact, it's the opposite.
Yeah. Well, to be successful in this perfect world with everybody is evangelistic, the start is a great product. And let's just say that not every company has a great product. So it's very hard to be evangelistic and succeed as an evangelist for something that's crap. It's hard to evangelize crap.
So how do you, so as somebody who's in their career, where should they be looking to align with companies? Like how, the interview state, like you're at a point in your career where you can have that luxury and you can align with companies that you truly do believe in, and you've had the experience. When somebody's earlier on in their career, what should they be asking? What questions should they be asking where maybe they can sort of better vet the company to make sure that they do align with the company who they can eventually evangelize and really tie into like their whole mission?
Okay, I'm going to completely contradict myself in a minute, but to start, go to work for companies that make stuff that you love. And if you love something, it's easy to be evangelistic about it. If you're just doing it for the money, take an extreme case. I don't think many investment bankers love private equity. They don't get up in the morning saying, how can I make the world a better place with private equity? How can I buy low and sell high? And that's going to dent the universe and make the world a better place. So it would be hard to be evangelistic about private equity. On the other hand, with a Macintosh, with Canva, it could be an electric car. I bet many Tesla employees are evangelistic about Tesla, that they believe that this is a way to prevent the end of humanity. So it takes a product or service that's the high road, and that's the start. Now, I said I was going to completely reverse myself. I will also tell you that I'm not naive. So let's take this case where, hypothetical case. So you go to work for a company that sells, I don't know, pet supplies online. And, you like dogs, you like cats, but you're not a dog kind of guy or a dog kind of gal or a cat kind of guy or a cat kind of girl. But you got this good job at this company. It's a startup. And you don't hate animals, but that's not your passion. And all of a sudden you get on and it becomes a rocket ship, and you're selling hundreds of thousands of cans of dog food and cat food per day, and leashes are flying off the shelf, and flea powder, you can't even keep it in stock, and all this kind of stuff. And now the company's valuation is $5 billion. And because you got in early, you got 1% of a $5 billion company. Trust me, you will get passionate about pet supplies. You may even be able to convince yourself that you're evangelistic, that you've made pet supplies more inexpensive. You've made pet supplies more available to people. You sell better kinds of pet supplies. So I'm not completely naive. Okay, I'm not telling you it's all pixie dust and unicorns, but the start is a great product.
I like that a lot. Is that something, is that a mantra that you've tried to live by, like in your career, like through Canva and then like obviously originally Apple?
Which part of what I said are you asking me about?
The whole, not the love for the company, like the falling in love for the company after they sell a million cans of dog food or flea repellent. Is that something that you've tried to sort of internalize, like as you've like, is that something like when you were younger self, much younger self, and you were, you're setting out in your career, is that something that you had top of mind, or is this something you sort of come to terms with like over your career?
Wait, are you saying if I had top of mind that if something takes off, I'll become in love with it? Or are you saying
No, did you go in vetting and loving,
I see,
like for example, Apple? Yeah.
I would say that when I was at the start of my career, I had not yet figured this out. So it was just plain, no pun intended, dog shit luck that I fell into Apple because of nepotism. And I tell you, when I saw Macintosh the first time, it was a religious experience. I mean, you're too young to know, but back then computers were not exactly what they are today. And there was no mouse, there was no graphics, there was no GUI, et cetera, et cetera. So when you saw the first version of that, oh my God, yeah, the angels started singing and the skies parted. So, but I can't tell you that I sat myself down and said, Guy, you got to look for something you love. Let's face it, when you're 25, 26, 27, you're just trying to figure out how to make money. It just happened that I figured out how to make money and I fell in love with what I was doing.
Yeah, that's first of all, that is very fortunate.
It is.
Because I don't think a lot of people. That's very, very fortunate.
Imagine if I went to Goldman Sachs. I mean,
yeah.
Although I maybe I would be saying, "Oh, I love private equity. I'm changing the world with private equity."
So I will ask a few questions just about your career in a bit, but I really do want to. We kind of dovetailed off of what you're doing now. So you're evangelizing at Canva. Yep. You realize the importance of evangelizing and across the organization. But I want to understand why you in your career right now, you're building out your own podcast.
Yeah.
You're building out your own community. Because that is something that you're doing for yourself. So yes. Walk us through why that's important.
Okay, so there's two answers to that. There's the high road and the low road. You want me?
Both. Let's hear both.
Okay, so the high road is over the course of 30 or 40 years, I've been very fortunate to make a lot of relationships, gain a lot of visibility. So I have achieved a position where I have the context and the connections to create a podcast like I have. I am an active listener of podcasts, and most podcasts have guests. And so I looked at that. I said, wow, Guy, Jane Goodall, you can get to Margaret Atwood, Bob Cialdini, Sean Thompson, Woz, Stephen Wolfram. I mean, these are remarkable people. So you could interview them about their remarkableness, how they got there, what they did, their advice, their takes on certain issues. I just released a podcast about Leon Panetta, and Leon Panetta was Secretary of Defense, Director of the CIA, Chief of Staff of Bill Clinton. He knows a few things about politics. He can help you interpret what's going on right now. So the high road was I figured out that I have the context and the connections, and now the time to create a podcast where I can really get remarkable people on record to preserve their wisdom for posterity. So that's the high road. The low road is I've been making 50 to 75 speeches a year, which means 50 to 75 trips per year, which means, one trip per week on average. And I am just sick of traveling. And so when I came out with my latest book, Wise Guy, I was on the other side of these kind of things. I was the interviewee as opposed to the interviewer. And so I would talk to these people like you, I'd say, so how many downloads do you get? And what's your business model? Well, I sell an ad at the start. Sorry, let me just.
No worries.
I what was I saying?
About the you said, like, how do you
Uh,
no, when you first started being the interview.
oh yeah. So I was the
And yeah.
interviewee, and I was asking interviewers about their business model. So
Yeah.
what's your business model? Well, I sell ads. How many ads do you sell? Well, one at the start, one in the middle, one in the end. And how much do you get for these ads? Oh, I get 20,000 for the first one, 15,000 for the second one, and 5,000 for the third one. So I'm not that mathematical, but I can add 20 and 15 and 5 and get 40. So I got 40,000 per episode. I said, now how many episodes do you do? Between 100 and 150 a year. So now I can multiply 40,000 times 100 and get 4 million. And I said, so you're telling me you're making at best case, even if you're lying to me, 4 million, I divide that in half, that's 2 million. So even if you're lying to me by a factor of 2, you're making 2 million. If you're lying to me by a factor of 4, you're making 1 million. So why am I getting my ass on the plane 52 times a year and you're just, doing podcasts without much travel and making either 1, 2, or 4 million bucks? So I said, I'm going to be a podcaster. I'm not going to be a public speaker anymore. So that's the low road reason.
It's not a low road. It's smart, because if you're gonna, so this is gonna segue into really where I wanted to drive this home, because people are in their career. I work a 9 to 5, so I manage a sales team, a software sales team, and this is something that I'm doing as a passion project. And it really doesn't take a lot to build something that you're an expert in, that you can do on the side. And you don't have to be like, you're not going to get the Jane Goodalls or, like that level of access. I think you interviewed Arianna Huffington. Like, that level of access is obviously reserved for people that have sort of built out themselves in their career and they're at a certain point. But it doesn't mean you don't get.
I'm an instant success. It only took 40 years.
Only 40 years. They don't see the 40 years. I have to, I just asked you, like, how many downloads is your podcast getting? And obviously it ramped up much quicker than most other people to start, but you've put years into this. So I think that but still you recognize that it's an easy thing to do. It's still a low labor.
Well, that's a whole nother
relative to.
I thought it would be easy to do. It's not that easy. I mean, there's no free lunch in the world. So I don't know about you, but when I interview, I have such a diversity. So I interview Jane Goodall, I have to understand chimpanzees. I interview Bob Cialdini, I have to understand social psychology. I interview Leon Panetta, I have to understand international relations and politics and Congress and government. And I interview Sean Thompson, I have to understand surfing. Well, that I kind of had that. And then I interview Christy Yamaguchi. Well, I'm not a big Olympic figure skater, so I had to figure out Olympic figure skating. So there's, I think, 4 or 5 hours per interview prep. There's 1 hour of the interview itself, and then I get the transcript back and the first pass of the audio. I think there's another 4 or 5 hours of editing of that I do. And
that's
then
the editing and the post.
Yeah, and then I give it to a sound designer, and he probably puts another 4 or 5 hours into it. And so now we have a finished product. And then the hard part begins, believe it or not, because the hard part is getting the word out. And you got to use social media and MailChimp and newsletter episodes and live video conferencing, and holy shit. I mean,
webinars, all that stuff.
It might be easier to get on a plane 52 times a year.
I think the whole point is, though, to start. Like, that's really, like, I encourage everyone to just start, because you put a lot of love. You put a lot of love into this. Yeah. You put a lot more love than a lot of people put into their podcast.
You think?
You put more love into it. I think so. I think so. I think also the more you do it, the easier it is to remove a little bit of that prep, because the questions that are going to come up, and you can guide people down, agnostic of what they do. Well, you want to be a little bit educated, but I think that it comes I think it gets a little bit easier. I hope it gets a little bit easier.
Well, how many episodes have you done?
So this is is it 20?
Okay, so 20 I'm at about 13, and I will tell you though that I have obviously been on this side, right? And so I know when somebody truly knows who I am and somebody truly doesn't. And so, you can ask 5 or 6. So, what was your career path? What was the secret to your success? And then it's obvious. What was it like working for Steve Jobs? So I know when they've looked at my Wikipedia entry, but I also know when they've done a deep dive. And so when I do a deep dive, let's take someone like Jane Goodall. So when you interview Jane Goodall, if you want to show her that you've done a deep dive, you have to say to her, well, tell me how, without a bachelor's degree, Louis Leakey helped you get a PhD at Oxford. So you didn't have any undergraduate degree and you got a PhD because Louis Leakey helped you. Okay, so that's not something that might be too obvious, although that is in her Wikipedia entry. But that's a kind of a detail, and so I don't think most people interviewing Jane Goodall would ask her, like, how'd you get a PhD without an undergraduate degree? And when you ask Leon Panetta, when you're interviewing Leon Panetta, everybody's asking him about being in the sit room at Osama bin Laden and all that. But I try to ask him, so let's look at, I hope you know who these people are, but let's look at James Mattis and John Kelly. So John Kelly was the chief of staff for Trump. James Mattis was Secretary of Defense, both Marine generals. They lasted a couple, 3 years, and then they were fired or left or, whatever, resigned. So I asked Leon, so I said, how do I interpret that? Do I look at it and say, well, were they complicit? Is the attitude, well, I only work for Trump 2 or 3 years. I'm not a bad guy. I left after 2 or 3 years. But you could make the case that's like saying, well, I only worked for Hitler for 2 or 3 years, man. I wasn't that bad a guy. I left after 2 years. Well, you can believe that. On the other hand, I said to Leon, so Leon, tell me, is it that, or is it these guys were patriotic Americans? They sacrificed. They went to work for someone they probably didn't ideologically agree with because they loved their country and they thought they could prevent disaster from the inside. Which way do I look at that, Leon? And so that's not something you just read Wikipedia and you come up with. So there's a whole diatribe about how hard it is to ask good questions, I guess.
Now, let me ask you this. Now I feel like all my questions are under the microscope, so you got me sweating.
We can reschedule and do this again, yeah.
No, it's good. It's good. I like it. I actually really like where this is going. So do you find as a marketer, you think that there's more value in delivering that granular content? Or do you think that to scale the podcast and to get it and get as many people interested as possible, knowing that the people that you're speaking to, people already don't have an idea of what, like, they haven't gone on their Wikipedia. So does it make sense to get that granular, or does it make more sense to stay high level? And what's better commercially?
Listen, when I have 2.5 million followers or episodes downloaded, or 2.5 million copies of each episode are downloaded, I will tell you. The answer is I don't know. I mean, maybe everybody asks those kind of simple, easy questions because that's what everybody wants to hear. So I don't know, of the people who listened to Leon Panetta's episode, I don't know how many were wondering, so yes, how should I think of John Kelly and James Mattis? That probably never occurred to 99.9% of the people. But then, isn't that what makes Terry Gross a great interviewer? Isn't that what makes a great 60 Minutes interviewer great? Not that they ask the softballs. So maybe I'm only appealing to 10,000 really smart people in the world. I don't know. I really don't know.
No, I'd be curious. We'll have to do a follow-up when you're in Toronto, or maybe when I'm in Hawaii. Actually, you know what? I would prefer to go there. 10 out of 10 times, I'll prefer to go there.
I'm not in Hawaii. I'm in California, but still, California is better than Toronto.
Oh, I thought you. Okay, I thought. I figured you were back home.
The world's greatest story, remarkable story, just happened in Toronto, where the Zamboni driver played for the Hurricanes and beat the Maple Leafs. Well, first of all, how hard could it be to beat the Maple Leafs? But that's a remarkable story.
It is. That was funny. I did see that.
That's a great story.
And the reason And what I like to do when I have these interviews is I really just like to focus on what the people care about right now, because I find that when you really dive into what you care about, it's happening right now. You get passionate about it. And I know that your podcast is relevant. I know your podcast is new. And I was listening to a couple minutes of the episode. The guy you were just mentioning. I apologize. Right before, Leon Panetta. Right before, I'm Canadian, so I actually did. I don't have the same. I don't know him as well as an American would. But it was very interesting, and I like how you structured it. I like the format. It does. Listen, with the hours you put in, it comes out quite well. So, like, congratulations.
One would hope.
Jeez. So what's next? What's next for you in your career? You know, you have so many things going on, and I'm not going to read your Wikipedia page because everyone else can do that. So I want to know. You know, you have your podcast. You're I guess, you know, you say not semi-retired. You're still working, obviously, but you still probably want to enjoy life a little bit more. You don't want to travel as much. You want to sort of focus on what?
I want to focus on surfing. So I take a break from surfing to work. And in a perfect world, I would just surf and be with my family. That's truly what I want to do. So podcasting is conducive to that. And I just, you know, I need to get a revenue model going. And I don't know if I can. I mean, it's to be determined. So that's what I want to do. I jacked up my speaking prices, so I've demarketed myself. Maybe I demarketed myself too much, but I demarketed myself. And listen, I'm 65, almost 66. So yeah, the clock is ticking. I don't think I'm going to look back on my life and say, man, I wish I had made more speeches. You know, that's not too likely.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone says that. Maybe they listen. Like speaking is like a necessary evil if you're trying to build out your brand. But at the end of the day, it's always a lot of work to travel, and you're not home. You're not with your family. Yeah. You're always on the plane. God forbid, right now.
People think that traveling is exciting, but they have no idea. It's just, you know, like for me, I get on a plane, I get off, I get in a car, I go to the hotel, I go to sleep, I wake up, I get in the car, I go to the airport. That's it. And that could be any city in the world. It could be as beautiful as Vancouver. It could be, you know, I don't know, anywhere in the world. That's what I do. So when people look at my schedule and say, wow, you go to these great places. Well, yeah, except I only know the Hilton Ballroom in every city in the world. So.
No, I know. So I think that, you know, it's always funny. I actually just, I was speaking with this last week because I was actually just in Montreal, then San Francisco, and then I went over to Germany. Now I'm home. So I'm complaining about the weather, but I'm home. I'm relaxing. Like it's nice. And by the way, out of everywhere, you know, okay, not San Francisco. Nobody expects San Francisco to be cold, but Montreal, even Germany. I went to a soccer game in Germany in the middle of February, no snow, anything. So Toronto is, I think, one of the coldest places I've ever been in my life. But no, that's so I'm happy that you really dove into the podcast piece, because I know that that's what you're doing now. And I think that the perspective of somebody at, you know, your level of your career, your point and where you are in your life, and you're starting this out is really beneficial. But
I have a prediction with my podcast that it may be 10 or 20 years after I die, but at that point, that's when my podcast will be most valuable. Not because I'm dead, but because so many years have gone by that, you know, I have created a really great archive of history of remarkable people. And so, you know, someday people are going to say, you know, we're going to look back at this Trump time and they're going to listen to the recording of Leon Panetta that I did in 2020. It might be 2040, and it's going to be very valuable. I just wish it would happen before I die.
God forbid. Well, I think we all kind of hope that all the work we put in is going to be going to have some sort of merit before we kick it. But what can you do? I agree with you though, because like the people you're interviewing are very, very, like, they're very polarizing. Like their stories, like they're very topical. Like it's very, very cool. I like the concept a lot. I think it's like a really great like niche that you've tapped into with just like the people that you have connections with.
You know, my positioning statement is NPR without the fun drives.
That's good. So that sort of wraps up like what you're working on now. I don't want to beat that to death. I think that for people that are listening to this, no, I'm serious. I know that you're still sort of figuring out how this whole podcast and how to monetize. There's so many ad partners that you can tap into. I'm not monetizing mine, but that's something that I've been looking into as well because I'm still early days in this. But you can go into ad partners. Like there's people that will sell ads. You can sign up. They're bringing you different deals and stuff like that. Like it's like any other agency.
They've reached out to me already, but I think it doesn't really get interesting and relevant to get 100,000 downloads per episode or something like that. So I'm not gonna make myself crazy to make a couple $1,000 or couple $100. It only gets interesting when it's tens of thousands, right? And so
well, you know what you should do? You should get on Joe Rogan. That's that's the
I don't
the pinnacle.
He hasn't called me yet, so
okay. Well, soon. I don't think he knows that you're into the podcast. But
I don't think he knows who I am. Period. So
no, you don't give yourself enough credit. He should. If he doesn't know, that's his own fault.
Okay.
What I wanted to ask a couple wrap-up questions just to sort of frame like where people are at in their career.
Okay.
So out of your entire career, what would you say the number one most important lesson is that you've learned?
So this is a typical question. So
it is a very typical question. It's vanilla as ever, but I love it.
It certainly is. Wait, 1 second here. My surfing partner just said he's getting ready, so I'm telling him I'm almost done. So
that's why I'm asking these. I'm wrapping up. I'm giving you tons of surfing time.
So I think in terms of running a company, product or service, I think the two most important things I learned first is that never ask people to do something you wouldn't do. So if you wouldn't go through CAPTCHA, if you wouldn't give a credit card number, if you wouldn't fill out 25 fields of personal information, if you wouldn't jump through all these hoops, then don't expect your customers to. Don't expect your vendors to do something you wouldn't do. Don't expect your employees to do something you wouldn't do. So that's advice number one. Advice number two would be that it's very difficult for your current customers to tell you how to truly, truly revolutionize your business. So I think if you talk to your current customers, they're all going to tell you better, faster, cheaper. Better, faster, cheaper Apple II. But better, faster, cheaper Apple II is not a Macintosh. Nobody told Steve, build me this computer, because all they could think about was Apple I and Apple II. And so to truly, truly innovate, you have to be ahead of the crowd. Now, so then, who do you believe? Well, I'm telling you, it's not your installed base. So it's your gut, it's your passion, it's your luck, it's people younger than you. I wish I could tell you there's 100% way to do this, but I am pretty confident that if you went to your existing customers and said, what would you like from us? They're only going to say better, faster, cheaper.
So on that point, try new things, iterate. It's okay to fail, but really look outside of what you're already doing if you really want to take it to the next level.
Basically, and you said something like it's okay to fail. That's not true. It's not okay to fail. Everybody think it's okay to fail because that's like some millennial bullshit kind of tech startup thing. It's not okay to fail. It's not okay to fail, waste people's money, waste people's time, waste people's careers and all that. Now, I'm not saying that if you fail, you should commit suicide, but you should do everything you can to not fail. If you do fail, at least you should learn from your failure. But I think this acceptance of failure has been too cavalierly thrown around. That let's raise $5 million from these fat cats, and we'll throw it up against the wall, and we'll buy foosball tables. And, we'll get in our
kombucha and ping pong.
We'll get the kombucha in the refrigerator, and we'll give everybody a Herschel backpack, and get our skinny jeans, and put on our facial hair and our Thursday boots, and 5 million here, 5 million there, let's see what happens. That's bullshit. That's bullshit.
Yeah, I agree. No, I agree. I think that attitude of blow money and it's okay to fail was propagated incorrectly out of the you will fail, but just learn and improve.
Yeah.
I think that it was taken way too far. So anyway, okay, this is another one that I like to ask. Biggest regret or mistake in your career, and why?
Well, I've had so many.
Launching a podcast?
I left Apple twice. I turned Steve Jobs down for another job. I was asked to interview for the first CEO position of Yahoo. So right there, that's about, I don't know, $4 billion. But
that's bigger than any mistakes I've made.
Yeah, I mean, everybody makes those kind of mistakes. Who the hell knew that Apple would be $1 trillion company? So I would say I haven't made like absolute total stupid mistakes except for the $4 billion. On the other hand, I haven't had this tremendous success. I'm not Elon Musk or Steve Jobs or Bill Gates, right? So I'm in the middle, and that's life. So, I still need to work. I have to pay tuitions. So life goes on.
Yeah.
So.
And do you have time for one more vanilla question? Then you can go surf.
Okay. I'm looking at the surf right now. Okay.
All right. Got it. Last one. Most important. If somebody wants to take their career to the next level, what's the skill they should focus on? It doesn't matter. It could be something technical. It could be personality. What's that one skill that can really take you?
I'll give you a high level philosophical answer that people can struggle to wrap their minds around. So draw an X and Y axis. And on the X axis, you have the degree of differentiation. And on the Y axis, you have the degree of value, how valuable you are. And so in this 2x2 matrix, all of life boils down to being unique and valuable. So if you have a unique and valuable product, like iPod when it first came out, the only way you could legally, inexpensively, easily have music in your pocket, iPod is successful. If you are the only person in your company who has a particular skill that's valuable, you'll be a very cherished employee. In your dating and marriage, if you are unique and valuable for your spouse, you never have to worry about getting divorced. So all of life boils down to becoming unique and valuable.
I love it. That's a good answer.
Okay.
That's one of the better answers I've heard. You nailed it. Good job.
Thank you.
Anything the open floor if you want to close with anything that we didn't discuss.
Well, I just want to put out an impassioned plea that people subscribe to my podcast so that they can get remarkable too. And the podcast is available at remarkablepeople.com. And I promise you, there is no better content.
Good. Okay. Good. I love it. All right. That's all I got.
Okay. I'm going surfing. Bye.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the chat.
Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye. So I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Sales versus Marketing podcast. Thank you so much, Guy, for the great chat. If you haven't already, please hit like, hit subscribe, and please share this podcast with all your friends, family, coworkers, peers, or anyone you would think who would benefit from learning from senior sales, marketing, and business leaders. This podcast is available wherever podcasts can be downloaded or streamed, and is also available on YouTube. Please leave some feedback. Any rating is okay as long as it's a 5-star rating. And have a really, really productive week. Have a wonderful week, and we will speak again soon. Bye now.